page. This also could be called a cover letter. My recommendation is if a title page is provided, just like how if formatting requirements are included, follow that. My suggestion is the same here. If there is a title page template that is provided, use it. The reason for that is, again, ease for the funding agency. When they're expecting multiple proposals coming in, usually that top sheet gets separated somehow so that it goes to someone administratively that's going to help to put together a process for reviewers. And so that cover sheet is important to be able to lay out what information the funding agency needs to be able to move through the review process fastest. Other times, agencies will ask you to provide a cover letter. Here are some considerations for you in that cover letter process. Oftentimes, they'll say we need a cover letter and it should include the following. So whatever information that they're asking you to provide, go ahead and provide it. It doesn't need to be fancy in terms of layout or format. In fact, the cover letter, the simpler, the better. Provide them the information they need. Ideally, if it can fit on one page, that simplifies the process. If you have official letterhead, it's always better to go ahead and include that information on that official letterhead. And when possible, specify the RFP details so that if your cover sheet ever gets separated from your document, which oftentimes it will be, right? Because as I explained with the title page, the process is top sheet comes off, proposals go one way, top sheet goes another way. So if your cover letter includes the sponsoring agency's name, the RFP name, the RFP number, whatever else you can reference to say, if my paper gets lost, this is where it needs to be connected to. That will be helpful for anyone who finds that. Additionally, make sure to include contact information and a signature. Sometimes folks think a signature is not needed on that cover letter, but again, it is another stamp of approval that there is an authorizing agent from the organization that is transmitting this proposal to the organization. The next item that we covered in the sections of the proposal was the executive summary, oftentimes also referred to as an introduction or maybe even an abstract. First of all, you want this document to be able to stand on its own. It has to stand on its own merit. It has to be able to communicate to the reader what is most important, because if that's all the reader ever reads, you need to leave a lasting impression. My suggestion is always to write it last. Use the time at the end to write your executive summary based on the final version of what your proposal looks like. I'm going to caution about research in the executive summary. Only include research there when it's truly supporting and relevant. And what I mean about that is there anything that's trending? Is there anything that's cutting edge? Because that's what you will want to include, but I will also caution you about using buzzwords. Oftentimes we overuse some of this, and that can be a turnoff to reviewers. So word of caution as it relates to research in terms of the executive summary piece of your proposal, only include it if it truly supports the intent of your executive summary. You have limited space in that executive summary, so choose wisely what you include there, which actually is the next item, right? You're going to choose to only include the most essential information there. Remember that your executive summary is a condensed version of your entire proposal. So how do you decide what gets included there? You want to focus on what you plan to achieve and how you plan to achieve it. As important as that, though, is you placing emphasis on the strengths and the assets of your team, because it is your team and those strengths and assets that will allow you to be successful. The executive summary is a time for you to shine. It's a time for you to go out there and say, this is my idea, and this is why I feel our team is going to be able to do this and do this well. So once you have your executive summary, and again, that's going to be last, but you have an idea of what's going to go in there from the start, we get into the actual, this is where the rubber meets the road. Because why are you writing a grant? Well, there has to be a compelling need somewhere. There has to be a problem that you're trying to solve. These are the questions you're going to ask yourself. And oftentimes, this section of the proposal is called a needs assessment or a problem statement. Where you want to spend the most of your time is on the project narrative. I call this the core of your proposal. Some people will call it the meat and potatoes. I've given it 2 slides, which gives you an indicator of how important this is. It is oftentimes the lengthiest part of your proposal as well. So like many of the other sections, ask yourself, are there limitations for this section? Word count, character count, page limits, because that gives you an idea of how much information you're going to be able to include in this section. Oftentimes, project narratives will ask you to identify what your plan is, what are your goals, and what are your objectives. Many of you have already heard about when you define goals, make sure that you're using SMART goals. And SMART is the acronym that is often used for goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. In addition to goals, proposals will often include objectives. I include only 3. There are many more, but these 3 I think are going to be the most common ones for those that are joining us for this series, which is why I focused on them. So process objectives. These explain what you are doing and how you will do it. It describes who the participants are. It describes the types of interactions that will take place, and it describes the types of activities that will take place. Now, impact objectives explain both short-term and long-term implications of your project. So you have the project plan and you have the planned activities, and impact objectives will help to describe the longer-term impacts on your target population, on your target audience. So what type of impact did we make as a result of implementing this project? The third objective that would be most common for us oftentimes is going to be outcome. And in outcome objectives, what we do is explain how you change attitudes, behavior, knowledge. Oftentimes those take longer to change, will need much more time in terms of the duration of your project. So being mindful of the different types of objectives you want to achieve. And finally, your implementation plan. So you need to have a succinct description of your plan activities, and there needs to be clear linkages between those activities and your objectives. All the more reason why this project of narrative section is that important.